What was your worst, weirdest experience at somebody else's house? Story 1. A buddy and I were walking down the street and noticed a drunk guy bothering a woman outside a store and his balls were hanging out of his shorts. We stopped to help. And so does some guy in an army jacket. And after the cops come by to deal with the drink guy, army guy invites us over to have a beer. We were about 14 or so at the time. We said sure. Story 2. When I was in college, there was this redneck named Scott who lived with his mother and was desperate to leave and move in with me. When I was helping him move, his mom lit up a joint which I ignored. Then she tried to grope my crotch. "Careful," Scott shouted. "My mom is a pervert." Over the years, that is meme for me. Story 3. Went to a friend's house. We came in and somebody started yelling and swearing at him from another room. For no reason and impromptu. Scary, threatening, and abusive sounding. It was his dad and the dad didn't realize I was there. The kid was cool about it, just kind of, maybe we should just go for a walk. It was how cool the kid was that unnerved me. Just his day-to-day. Story 4. A long time ago I went to my weed dealer's apartment to get some weed. He was a tough guy, all tatted up, hung around some shady characters. I get there and he has 2 kittens he just adopted. One of the kittens takes a liking to me, so I'm in a room with these hard-ass tough guys, and while we're passing this blunt around, I'm sitting in a lazy boy chair and this cat is sitting on my chest and kneading its paws into me and purring. It was the weirdest environment for this to be happening. Story 5. I remember when I was a kid, probably around 10 or so, we went to friends of our families for dinner. The husband and wife got into a very loud screaming match over whether to serve creamed corn or frozen corn. I'm talking in each other's faces and being shrilly loud. 10-year-old me was fascinated by how such a mundane object could arouse such passions, and of course I wanted to see how it turned out, but we were instead quickly ordered into the car and left. Still never understand how corn caused such a disagreement. I found out later they got divorced. Story 6. This one time I was at my ex-GF's, and we weren't doing very well in the relationship. We were in the driveway talking and we ended up sitting in her car. While we talked about how the relationship wasn't the same as before, and how we weren't really feeling like it was going anywhere, the regular talk before breakup. It was pretty tense and kinda sad. We noticed that the bathroom window was on. So we lowered our voices as we didn't want her family to hear us talking about breaking up. She was about to cry when we heard a massive, compressed fart echo through the confines of the porcelain toilet. The atmosphere changed entirely. We tried not to laugh, but it was impossible not to. Her mom called her with doubt as she asked her name. We rushed the hell out of the car and proceeded to laugh our asses off. That day, whatever her mom ate before laying the log saved our relationship. We didn't break up until a few months later. Story 7. When I was about 10, my cousins and I were sleeping at my grandma's house in Oklahoma. My Uncle Rick came home drunk and got loud, so my grandma started yelling at him and hitting him with a rolled-up magazine. My other Uncle Cecil, who was only 4 years older than us, told us 3 kids to run out the back door and hide at the creek 'cause Rick's a mean drunk. It's about midnight and we run down to the creek and stand around looking at each other for about 10 minutes and then we walk back. We come in through the front door with muddy feet and leaves in our hair. Uncle Rick had already gone to bed. He wasn't mean at all. My grandma yells at us asking why we were outside. We say we were hiding at the creek. She says, "Who told you to hide at the creek?" We all point at Uncle Cecil, who was in the corner laughing. She starts chasing him around the table and beating him with a magazine. He was hiding his face, yelling oh like he was in pain, but I could see he was still laughing. We all ran to the bedroom and jumped in bed and pulled the covers over our heads until it got quiet and we went to sleep. Story 8. As a 12-year-old, we shifted to a small town from our cattle property so we kids could go to high school. I didn't know anyone at school till the weird kid befriended me, invited me home after school one day. There's me thinking great, I'm making friends. When we got there her mom was obviously slightly drunk, no father round that I could see, just sitting in her room talking crap when her mom calls us into her bedroom. So we went in and her mom is lying on a single bed and there's a double in there that we both sort of lounged on. Then her mom starts crying. The girl tells me her dad died about 6 months ago. I'm going, so sorry to hear that. Her mom starts telling me how he was a bad alcoholic and they'd gone to bed one night. He was spooning her when he died in his sleep with his arms wrapped around the mom. 'Cause she was drunk she didn't wake up till quite late and his body had started rigor mortis. She realizes and starts screaming. Daughter runs in, dad is dead and mom is stuck in his arms. Had to call police to help apparently. She couldn't get out. Best bit though was I was sitting on the bed where he died 6 months previous, but they'd never changed the sheets or covers. They smelt musty. No wonder the girl acted weird. They both really needed therapy, but this was nearly 50 years ago. Story 9. When I was 14, I went to a friend's house for a birthday party sleepover. There was 5 other girls invited. After dinner, we got settled in the lounge room to watch horror movies. Her parents came in and sat on the couch, took out 2 huge bongs and got stoned. They started commentating the movie as we watched it, like it was a live sports event. This was the first time all us girls had seen drugs, or been around someone on drugs. So weird. Birthday girl was so embarrassed. Story 10. We went to a foreign classmate's house to do our film class project. He said that since we're making a horror film, we could try filming in the dark storage space above the dining room. So indeed he climbed up there to get some establishing shots. But as soon as he crawled in, we found out the ceiling wasn't made of concrete and he ended up breaking the ceiling and falling down. Luckily he wasn't hurt. But now there's a big human-sized hole in the ceiling. Story 11. In college I drank way too much. One weekend a friend invited a group of us to go ice fishing and then stay the night at his parents' house. I became blackout drunk and in the morning I woke up in his childhood bedroom which still had old toys, silly wallpaper and rocket ship blankets. It was so surreal. I sat there for what felt like forever, terrified, desperately trying to remember where I was and how I got there. It's one of only a few times I've legitimately panicked. Story 12. One time I went to a sleepover when I was 12, and the mom was there the whole time. I don't just mean in the house doing her own thing. I mean she had a sleeping bag out on the living room floor with all of us. Most awkward sleepover I've ever been to. Worst part is the girl didn't even think it was weird. Also, we have to go to bed at 8 o'clock, so there's that. Story 13. I went over to a place that a person I was dating lived. He and his roommate of 3 years had insisted on permanently keeping all the windows open and essentially allowing the house to become overgrown. They had multiple birds living in there. Also were random things written throughout the house in pen, Sharpie, crayon, as if whenever they had a thought they'd scribble it down. We got high as balls and watched Evil Dead. I got so tripped out during one scene, I just left without explanation. Story 14. In college, I went to this girl's house during a free period with 6 or 7 friends. We arrive and she opens the door, says hello to her father, and immediately strips down to her bra and panties in the living room. We spend 45 minutes hanging out with her and her dad, and the whole time she's walking around and basically nothing. I asked her dad about it at a different time, and he nonchalantly says she's always done this, and acted like it was a completely normal thing to do. Also, bonus points for her goth friend who sat there playing with a knife the whole time. Story 15. Went to a friend's early Saturday in middle school, possibly 9th grade. Went grocery shopping with her sister and mom. Well, we get back and I had a bunch of bags of groceries waiting in the garage by the door. My friend said to just go in. I didn't want to because her dad was home and I didn't meet him yet. My friend insisted it was fine. I went in from the garage door and when I looked in directly to the right in the kitchen, her dad was cooking something on the stove, in only his tidy whities. I don't remember which expletive he yelled, but I immediately went back out the way I came. I can only imagine the face I was making. Somehow, my friend convinced me to still stay the night. I was deeply embarrassed and avoided her father. Lol, I felt like such a bad guest. I always knock and I was mostly mad at her for telling me to go in. Hilarious now though. Story 16. I met up with this guy to go for our first date, ended up back at his house which he shared with his parents. No big deal, right? As soon as I step through the door, the smell of animal feces hits me like a brick. I held my breath and entered the lounge, where there was rubbish and boxes stacked as high as the ceiling. Even in this dude's room, there was boxes and rubbish. They had about 10 cats running around, 5 hamsters, pretty sure one of them was dead in the cage, 3 birds all cooped up in one small bird cage, 3 dogs and an iguana. I never saw him again after I made my excuses and left, blocked the dude's number and blocked and deleted him from my socials.